In this tutorial, we're going to look at raster images. These are digital images that are formed in bitmap editing programs. This topic is covered in Chapter 8, and this is a fundamental concept when dealing with images in any sort of digital media platform. And to look at exactly what we mean by raster image, I'm going to jump over to Photoshop. And here in the Photoshop window, I have an image that I've loaded in that's a high resolution image that was shot with a digital camera. And to understand how this image is formed on screen, I'm going to zoom all the way in as far as I can into the image by holding down my Command plus key on the keyboard. And as I zoom in, we increase the magnification on this image all the way up to the maximum amount that Photoshop will allow, which is 3200%. And you can see this in the upper left hand corner that we're at 3200% magnification. So we're zoomed all the way in to the level of magnification where we can actually see the individual components that make up this digital image. And you'll notice an array of little tiny square tiles of colors that are formed in rows from left to right and in columns from top to bottom. And this is what we mean by a raster. A raster is just simply a matrix of rows and columns composed of tiny squares of color that we refer to in the language of digital media as pixels. And these are just simply picture elements, and each picture element or pixel contains a single color. And in the book, the illustration that I used to talk about this was mosaic art. And if you look at some of the old art history books where you see how colored tiles have been used throughout the centuries to form beautiful images on the facades of buildings and on ceilings in cathedrals. I've traveled to Europe several times and have seen many of these up close. And the concept is basically the same, that we take individual squares of tile that each represent a single color, and we form with that a holistic image. So if I zoom back out, you can see the image from a distance, and from a distance, because the pixels are so small, you don't notice the individual elements that go together to form the holistic image. I'll zoom out a little bit more so you can see the entire image. Raster graphics, raster images, are defined by two basic properties: the pixel dimensions of the image and by the resolution of the image. So let's deal first with the pixel dimensions. And down here in the lower right hand corner, I've gone ahead and written down that this image is 3,888 pixels wide by 2,592 pixels high. This is the pixel dimensions of this particular image. And below that, I've written 300 ppi, and this stands for pixels per inch. Every digital display has a built-in resolution, which basically refers to how tightly packed the pixels on the screen are. As a general rule, in the world of print, when we're creating documents that are physical documents intended for physical circulation, think of newspapers, magazines, books, etc., usually 300 ppi is the standard resolution in order to produce a high resolution copy of an image on paper. Well, in digital media, the resolution of screens that are light-based media, we're not talking about physical paper anymore, you can get by with a lot lower resolution. And so typically the PPI, or the resolution of digital images, is usually much lower, and we sort of round it off at around 72 PPI. There's a lot of resolutions in between, and digital devices are becoming much higher in terms of their native resolution. So we have devices now, tablets and smartphones, that have resolutions that are closer to 200 ppi and maybe even higher in some situations. So within Photoshop, I can go up anytime I want, and I can verify the image size and resolution by clicking on Image and Image Size from the File menu. And that opens up this property window, and you can see here these are the dimensions that I have typed out on screen. We normally want to refer to the size of our images in pixels, and so you can see that again the width is 3,888, the height is 2592, and then down here under resolution you can see that the pixels in this particular image are represented as 300 ppi. And that's going to get translated differently depending on which device you're using to look at the image. So I want to give you some ideas of how we can effectively change the raster matrix, or the image structure of an image, to make it smaller for different types of applications. And I'll get into how to resize in the next tutorial. But for now, I just want to show you a couple of other versions. If I tab over to this version of the image, this is the exact same photograph, but I've resized it so that it's 1000 pixels by 667 pixels wide, and it's now 72 ppi. We took the original image shot by the camera, which we would refer to as the native file. It's the native version. It's the highest resolution version of that photo in existence, and I've downsized it or downsampled it for some particular application within digital media. And if I want to go up again and verify this, I can go to my image window, choose image size, and you can see that even though this image looks identical to the first one, the actual pixel dimensions are different. 1000 pixels wide by 667 pixels high. And the book also talks about pixel count, and pixel count is achieved by multiplying the pixel width by the pixel height. And if you do that here, you'll get roughly a little more than 500,000 pixels, 667,000 pixels. The math is pretty easy to accomplish here because we're dealing with a round number on the width. And so you can tell just a regular digital image is going to have a lot of pixels associated with it. Each pixel has to be converted numerically to zeros and ones, and so pixel dimensions and the resolution of a digital image directly correspond to the file size of that image. The larger the number of pixels, the higher the resolution. All things being equal, the larger the file size is going to be. So very often we acquire images at high resolution levels, and then we downsample those images because we want to conserve file space, especially if we're working in the area of web design. We don't want to load really large files up to the web, because doing so is going to increase the amount of time that it takes for a local server accessing a website with a high resolution to actually render it out on screen. So it's very common to begin with a big image and to downsample that image into various sizes. And just to show you one other version here, we can go over here to even smaller version. And so I've taken that original image and I resized this one down to 600 by 400 pixels, 72 ppi. So to show you the application here, I'm going to jump over to my Safari browser, and here's a WordPress site where I have created a post, and I've just simply called it Raster Image Resolution, and I took two versions of that image, sort of the medium range or the higher of the low res images. That was 1000 pixels by 667. I inserted this into the post, and then below it I inserted the smaller version. And again, you can see these are identical images. The content of the image is the same in both digital images, but one version is larger in terms of its pixel dimensions than the other. And there's actually a typo down here. This should be 72 ppi on the bottom one. But you can see physically rendered in the browser, there's a difference in terms of how the images look on screen, because one is technically smaller than the other. So as you think of digital images, we often use the phrase high resolution to refer to an image that has a larger quantity of pixel information associated with it. There's basically more pixels in the image, and we would refer to a low resolution or a lower resolution image as a version of the same image, but one that is comprised of far fewer pixels.